All right, let's dive right into this. We are constantly, and I mean constantly, bombarded with headlines about this completely impossible housing market. We're talking six-figure down payments, rents that honestly look more like luxury car payments, the whole shebang. But floating around out there in the depths of the internet, there are these unbelievably, almost suspiciously cheap real estate listings. Houses priced so low you'd swear it was a typo or some kind of scam. Well, today in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and look at the hard data behind the absolute cheapest towns in America. We're going to compare the fully functional, thriving cities right alongside the ones struggling with severe economic decline. Because, as you'll see, the price tag, yeah, that's really only half the story.
One single dollar. I mean, that is the ultimate real estate illusion, right? Less than the cost of your morning coffee. In places like Gary, Indiana and Detroit, Michigan, there are actual programs where you can literally buy an abandoned or condemned property for a $1 bill. It sounds like the absolute hack of a lifetime. A total bypass of the modern housing crisis. You buy the house for pocket change, fix it up, and boom, you're set. But of course, there's always a catch. Extreme affordability at this level never just happens in a vacuum. It is almost always masking a much larger systemic problem. Let's look at exactly what happens when you sign that $1 deed.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer scale of the hidden costs. In Detroit, their property tax system runs on something called uncapping. Basically, this means the very second you buy that incredibly cheap house, its taxable value resets to the current market value. The source data actually shows one documented case where a buyer thought they were getting the steal of the century, only to watch their annual property taxes violently jump from around $3,500 to a staggering $19,680. That effective tax rate sits at over double the national average. So sure, you bought the house for $1, but the city is going to essentially bankrupt you to the tune of almost 20 grand a year just to keep the lights on.
Section 1. Ghost Towns and Economic Decline.
So let's see how this builds into an even darker reality. When we look past the property taxes, we have to look at the towns themselves. What happens when a town literally loses its primary economic engine? Well, the data shows us that extreme affordability is often just a symptom of a community that has quite literally been abandoned or destroyed by environmental and economic collapse. Look at this timeline of Pitcher, Oklahoma. From 1917 to 1947, this town produced over $20 billion in ore. They supplied half the lead for World War I bullets. It was booming. But when the mining ended, it left behind a mind-blowing 36 million tons of contaminated sludge. By the 1990s, an absolutely tragic 63% of the children in the town had elevated levels of lead in their blood just from playing on toxic chat piles. Then, in 2008, an EF4 tornado wiped out over 100 homes. The ground was so unstable from all the abandoned mine shafts that rebuilding was literally impossible. By 2013, the town officially dissolved. Population zero. It's really the ultimate cautionary tale. Sometimes real estate is practically free because the environment itself is completely uninhabitable.
Now, even if the ground beneath you isn't toxic, the local economy just might be. Take a look at Danville, Illinois, over on the left. You can buy a median home here for just $64,000, with some homes even dipping under 50 grand. But over a quarter of the residents live below the poverty line, and the town offers virtually zero local job opportunities. It's kind of a town that just forgot to officially close its doors. Then on the right, we have Gary, Indiana, home of that $1 program we mentioned earlier. The catch here? Gary has lost 63% of its peak population, and its crime rate sits at a terrifying 76% above the national average. So, rock-bottom prices usually mean one of two things: a completely dead job market or violently high crime rates.
Section 2. High risk, high reward.
So you might be asking yourself, does cheap always mean doomed? Well, not exactly. Let's look at Rust Belt revivals like Toledo and Cleveland. There is this middle ground of what we can call hustle cities. These are places attempting a massive, ground-up comeback. Both Toledo and Cleveland offer typical home values well under $200,000. Actually, Toledo was named the #1 housing market for 2024 by Realtor.com. They've got world-class zoos, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Cleveland Clinic, and some really great big city arts and culture. It's an incredibly high quality of life that is exceptionally affordable. But the data also shows us the stark reality of the risk involved here. Toledo carries a 23% poverty rate, which is more than double the national average. And Cleveland, despite its incredible home price appreciation lately, still struggles with a violent crime rate that sits 336% above the national average. That puts it in the bottom 10% nationally for safety. So you definitely get the culture, but you lack guaranteed stability.
And, on top of the economic and safety hurdles, you've got to survive the local infrastructure. I absolutely love this quote from our source material describing what it's like driving in these Rust Belt cities. Merging here is a form of telepathy. There are no blinkers, only vibes. I mean, between the chaotic weather that randomly brings snow in April and potholes so deep they could literally swallow a compact car, living in these high-reward comeback cities requires a certain level of grit. It is definitely not for the faint of heart.
Which brings us to what is probably the most important question of this entire explainer. We've seen the toxic traps, we've seen the dead job markets, and we've explored the high-risk hustle cities. But if you are, say, a remote worker or a family looking to relocate to escape the crushing cost of living, where can you actually afford to live safely? Where are the towns that actually function?
Section 3. The search for stability. Let's find those functional towns. Okay, let's shift our focus to the real hidden gems in the data. These are the places that have miraculously managed to maintain a low cost of living while actually providing the fundamental pillars of a good life: safety, family-friendly amenities, and genuine job stability. Let's bring back Danville, Illinois on the left, our textbook example of an economic void. But look at the right, Tupelo, Mississippi. The median home price here is a highly affordable $170,000. But unlike Danville, Tupelo has a genuinely thriving economy. You've got massive healthcare networks providing stable jobs, a super robust furniture manufacturing tradition, and steady industrial employment through Toyota supplier networks. So the crucial point is, Tupelo is cheap because the state of Mississippi is cheap, not because the town itself went horribly wrong. It actually has a real economic engine.
And hey, it's not just about jobs, right? It's about your quality of life. The data highlights places like Cortland, New York, and Weirton, West Virginia. Cortland gives you that awesome college town stability, beautiful fall foliage, and quick access to the Finger Lakes. Weirton actually rates as the absolute safest city in West Virginia, offering charming brick houses, gorgeous country clubs, and genuine family-friendly activities. These towns are on the move. They really represent that sweet spot for remote workers who want that nostalgic small-town America vibe, but without sacrificing their personal safety or ending up in a ghost town.
Section 4. Functional and Thriving Gems. Let's look at the real success stories.
All right, we are arriving at the absolute peak of the data right now, the ultimate success stories. These are the locations that totally defy the odds, balancing major economic growth with a cost of living that simply refuses to skyrocket. 3.1. This number is absolutely crucial. This is the home affordability ratio, which just means the median home price divided by the median income. The national average right now sits at 4.8, but in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it's at a phenomenal 3.1, which is tied for the best in the entire country. And what's really amazing is that Pittsburgh isn't just surviving, it is thriving. It transitioned from an old steel town into a hub hosting tech giants like Google, Uber, and Duolingo. It has world-class universities and big-time sports teams, yet the cost of living just never got the memo. You can actually afford to live here and still have money left over to, buy furniture for your house.
But there is one town in the data that perfectly balances everything we've talked about today. It's the absolute blend of cost, safety, and functionality on the entire list. And no, we're not talking about the Decatur in Illinois that smells like soybean processing. We are talking about Decatur, Alabama. Just look at these stats for a second. This is what a functional, affordable American city actually looks like. The median home is sitting right between $180,000 and $195,000. The overall cost of living is 14% below the national average. But here is the real kicker. The unemployment rate is an incredibly low 2.9%. Remember earlier when we saw those towns just bleeding jobs and populations? Decatur is doing the exact opposite. The job market is remarkably stable and the crime rates run safely below the state averages.
And this brilliantly illustrates what makes a town truly livable for families. It's not just a Dollar General sitting in a field of broken dreams. Major employers like United Launch Alliance, who literally build rockets, by the way, and 3M provide massive job stability. The schools are decent, there's a really healthy housing inventory so you aren't out there fighting massive investment firms just to get a starter home, and there are real family amenities, places like the Point Mallard Wave Pool and historic downtown districts.
Now, I have to say, the source material perfectly captures the spirit of Decatur. With this phrase, it is aggressively normal. There's absolutely no glamour here. There's no trendy warehouse district getting gentrified. As the quote says, the nightlife peaks at Applebee's. But here's the thing. When you are looking for real estate, being boring is actually the ultimate luxury. It means there are no water crises, no underground fires, and no skyrocketing crime rates. It quietly, effectively just works.
So, let's bring it all together. On one side, we have the $1 illusion. It tempts you with practically free real estate, but traps you with toxic environments, zero economic opportunity, skyrocketing taxes, and severe crime. On the flip side, we have the $180,000 reality. Sure, it requires an actual mortgage, but in return, you get stable jobs, decent schools, personal safety, and a community that is actually looking toward the future.
We started off today by chasing the absolute cheapest housing imaginable, but the data clearly shows that rock-bottom prices always carry a heavy hidden toll. The real gold mines aren't the $1 gimmicks. They are the quiet, unassuming cities that still offer the basics of the American dream without that massive coastal price tag. Which leaves us with this thought to ponder as we wrap up. In today's chaotic economy, is a boring, affordable, and functional town